In Crimea, a catastrophic crisis is unfolding. The Belbec River, a vital water source for cities like Seistoel, has completely dried up for the first time in over half a century. At first glance, this appears to be merely an environmental disaster, but the roots of the problem reach far deeper. Vladimir Putin assured the people of Crimea a future filled with stability and prosperity, yet the harsh realities of war, military setbacks, and flagging governance have left these promises like barren fields. Today, not only are the rivers run dry, but so too are the spirits of the people. In bustling cities such as Sevastel and Simaropel, water trickles from taps for just a few hours each day, primarily in the dull hours of dawn and dusk. Residents scurry to fill up any container they can find during these brief windows, struggling to meet their daily needs. In neighborhoods where access is even more limited, the situation is bleaker. Blue barrels are stationed at select locations, and long queues form as desperate individuals wait for water tankers. Under the scorching sun, they cling to their buckets, hoping to secure just a drop of clean water. This crisis weighs heavy not only on civilians but also on the over 60,000 Russian soldiers currently stationed on the peninsula. In modern warfare, water is as crucial as ammunition, with thousands of liters needed daily for operational survival. The occupation administration aims to prioritize resources for the military, but this intention remains little more than a scribble on paper. Reports reveal that water deliveries to some military bases reach a meager 20 to 30 liters per unit daily, a fraction of what even a modest contingent requires. Across Crimea, thirst has become a common enemy for every individual, soldier and civilian alike. To grasp the magnitude of this disaster, one must delve into Crimea's geographical realities and historical complexities. The peninsula has long been plagued by insufficient freshwater sources, with its arid climate making survival a constant struggle. Decades ago, the Soviet Union undertook an ambitious engineering project, the North Crimea Canal, designed to channel water from Ukraine's Dnipro River to the thirsty lands of Crimea. This canal served as a lifeline, supplying 85% of the peninsula's water for irrigation, agriculture, and daily consumption. However, when Russia illegally annexed Crimea in 2014, Ukraine made a pivotal move, severing this essential artery. The taps were turned off, ushering in a relentless battle for water access. Despite pouring billions into drilling new wells and unsustainable groundwater extraction, Russia could not replicate the vast quantities that flowed from the canal. Following the full-scale invasion of Ukraine in February 2022, one of Putin's ambitions was to resolve this water crisis decisively. In the war's early days, Russian forces occupied the Kakhovka region, capturing a crucial hydroelectric dam. For a brief moment, water flowed once more to Crimea, heralded as a strategic triumph. But that fleeting victory proved to be a cruel illusion. What fate awaited Crimea now? Just as hopes began to rise, tragedy struck again. In June 2023, the Kakhovka Dam met its demise in a catastrophic explosion, casting into doubt everything previously believed about Crimea's future. This disaster not only sparked an ecological crisis but also voided the water supply once resumed. With the reservoir emptied, the lifeline that the canal had once provided vanished, plunging Crimea back into despair. The situation transformed from a manageable crisis into an intimidating catastrophe. As the Belbec River runs dry, echoes of promises made in the past haunt the present. The people of Crimea find themselves facing a grim new reality, with the weight of the regime's past decisions bearing down heavily on their shoulders. A new chapter of suffering begins, echoing the pain felt by the nearly 2.5 million residents trapped in this fight for survival, where the basic need for water has become a source of humiliation and hardship. What happens when desperation overtakes hope? As the summer sweats on, will the citizens come together, or will survival instincts tear them apart? The heart of Crimea beats amidst this turmoil, desperate for change amid the drought, a struggle only time will unveil. In a catastrophic turn of events, the Kakhovka Dam exploded in a massive blast, responsibility still shrouded in mystery. This wasn't just environmental ruin, it sealed Crimea's grim destiny. The giant reservoir that fed the North Crimea Canal drained away. Water levels plummeted, hitting far below the canal's intake. Heartbreaking irony deepened as Putin's military gamble backfired spectacularly. The water crisis he claimed to fix in 2022 roared back, fiercer and irreversible. This underscores a regime choking on its own reckless plans, leaving the Belbec River desiccated for the first time since 1971. Climate change masks the real culprit, but it's war's shadow, failed leadership, and deceit that stripped Crimea bare. Can you imagine a peninsula where taps run dry, soldiers thirst, and dreams of abundance turn to dust? Once thriving under the canal's flow, the Belbec now bears crushing weight as Crimea's backbone. Without it, natural rivers like this one face unrelenting strain. Vladimir Putin's blunders have plunged nearly 2.5 million lives into nightmarish uncertainty. A land of sun-soaked resort memories now fights for droplets, a mortifying fight for survival's essence. Dive into the frightful health storm brewing here. Overpumping groundwater poisons it, salinity soaring, contamination spiking. Feel the grit in every sip, the acrid tang on your tongue. Sanitary disasters loom, with cholera and dysentery threats looming large in scorching summers. Picture crowded hospitals, weary bodies heaving from tainted water's hidden fury. Civilians aren't alone in this agony. Russian troops, over 60,000 strong, suffer too. Army bases ration 20 to 30 liters daily, pitiful for 1,000 soldiers battling the heat. Unsanitary pits breed infections, eroding morale, weakening defenses. The stench of decay hangs heavy, a chilling reminder of how thirst undermines empires. Crimea's drought extinguishes more than rivers, it drowns the economy in despair. For ages, this was Eastern Europe's crown jewel, a dreamland of beaches and history. Yalta's swaying palms, Alushta's sandy throngs, Livadia Palace's imperial echoes, once drawing millions. In golden pre-annexation years, 6 to 8 million visitors flocked yearly from Ukraine, Poland, Germany, the world over. Billions flowed in, painting Crimea vibrant. Annexation in 2014 shattered that mosaic. European crowds vanished, sanctions barred the sea. Kremlin subsidies propped up illusions, 8 to 9 million tourists in 2019, only Russians flooding subsidized seats. War's 2022 eruption transformed paradise into peril. By 2025 summer, numbers crater below 500,000, a ghost town mockery. Agriculture wilts under the blow. Vineyards yield 50 to 70% less, grapes losing price tang. Lavender and rose fields, perfume life's essence, wither without floods of water. Rice paddies crack apart. Echoing fuel famines, gas stations shudder en masse. Lines snake kilometers, people clutching jerry cans for days under blistering sun, only to face empty slates and rage. Smell the desperation in midnight thefts, drivers siphoning from neighbors' tanks in shadowed Yalta alleys. Ration cards, echoing Soviet ghosts, dole 20 liters per soul, laughable, fueling riots. Telegram whispers cascade, trucks arrive here, rush. But pumps dry instantly amid honking chaos, leaving despair's bitter burn. Public transit crumbles similarly. Buses pack wall to wall, engines choking the air with exhaust foulness, while passengers cling in sweltering close quarters, every bump a reminder of fractured normalcy. But whispers spread of underground networks trading fuel and forbidden deals. Could these desperate alliances spark unrest, flipping Crimea's fragile calm into something far more explosive? What dark surprises lurk if the shortages spiral further, pitting neighbor against neighbor in this forgotten siege? The story so far paints a grim picture. Crimea, once thriving with tourists and bustling agriculture, now faces a relentless drought and a crumbling economy. What used to be sun-soaked beaches and vibrant vineyards are now dry and desolate. Imagine the names Yalta, Alucha, and the Grand Livadia Palace, places that echoed with laughter and life for millions seeking sun, sea, and history. Before 2014, Crimea was a crown jewel of Eastern Europe's travel map. Each year, between 6 and 8 million visitors arrived, not just from Russia but from Ukraine, Poland, Germany, and all corners of the globe. They fueled booming tourist industries, brought in billions in foreign currency, and gave Crimea a vibrant global identity. Then, everything shattered overnight. The annexation in 2014 erased Crimea's international allure. Ukrainian and European tourists vanished without a trace. In a desperate attempt to mask this void, the Kremlin launched an aggressive propaganda campaign. Russian state-owned companies were urged to send their workers on subsidized vacations to the peninsula. Discounts on flights and trains flooded the market. They boasted numbers, 8 or even 9 million tourists at peak moments like 2019 and 2021. But the truth? Almost exclusively Russians came, turning those figures into an illusion, a hollow echo of former glory. With the outbreak of war in 2022, the final nail was driven in. Crimea was no longer a holiday treasure but a garrison under siege. By summer 2025, the number of visitors plunged below 500,000. But the collapse didn't stop at tourism. Agriculture, Crimea's heartbeat, is fading fast. Without the vital water from the North Crimea Canal, the lush vineyards, orchards, and rice paddies wither under the scorching sun. Experts warn that grape harvests could plunge by 50 to 70%, and the very essence of their quality, once celebrated far beyond the peninsula, faces irreversible damage. Lavender and rose fields, symbols of Crimea's charm and key to the perfume and cosmetics industries, suffer the same fate. These delicate crops thirst for vast quantities of water, now simply unavailable. Crimea stands at a crossroads, where the converging crises of drought, economic decay, and fading identity spell a refusal of mercy. Is there still a chance for revival, or is this beautiful land doomed to dry up along with the hopes of its people? Now, waves of hardship engulf Crimea. Drought cripples the economy, agriculture wilts, and scarce water threatens health and survival. Grapevines yield far less, with harvests shrinking by 50 to 70%. Rose and lavender fields, icons of the peninsula's fragrant heritage, shrivel under relentless thirst. Essential oils for perfumes and cosmetics demand floods of liquid life that simply vanish. Can you imagine a place where a tanker's groan at a station ignites chaos, turning neighbors into thieves under the moon's pale glare? That's Crimea's brutal reality now. Every crisis collides like storm fronts, forging a maelstrom. Parched soils mimic the dying spirit of this land, but add a gasoline famine, and the agony multiplies. Over half the peninsula's fuel pumps stand silent, abandoned husks along desolate roads. Where they cling to life, serpentine lines snake for kilometers, writhing in the scorching heat. Sun beats down mercilessly, baking skin and wills alike. People clutch rusty cans, waiting, sometimes for days. The acrid stench of sweat and desperation hangs heavy, mingling with the faint, mocking odor of distant exhaust fumes. Yet, cruel fate strikes again. Fuel-out signs mock them before they reach the forefront. Hands drop in fury, voices rise in despair. Homeward trudge they, empty-handed and hollow. Flashback to pre-crisis summers, the triumphant roar of engines revving on coastal cliffs, waves crashing rhythmically below, salty breeze carrying laughter and the crisp snap of beer cans, now a ghost of ease, erased by Putin's follies. Who could foresee this humiliation? Russia's mighty grip slipping on essentials? Social media blasts images from resorts like Yalta, where night transforms civilized streets into battlegrounds. People slip through shadows, siphoning fuel from parked cars, no trust, just feral instinct. The metallic slosh of stolen liquid sounds like betrayal. Cars sit idle throughout days, their owners roaming in futile hunts for drops of energy. At lucky stops, the buzz builds, prices soar to 80 rubles per liter. That's unaffordable for masses scraping by on meager wages, their pockets echoing with coins that clink like hollow promises. Moscow's fix? A Soviet-era ration card farce, 20 liters per soul, a pitiful drip that angers more than aids. It doesn't bandage the wound, it peels back scabs, exposing raw rage. Public outcry grows. Is this the Kremlin's grand plan, rationing hope itself? Drivers form whisper networks, phones buzzing with urgent whispers. A tanker lurks at that station. Or ration cards dole 20 liters there. Seconds later, hordes descend in stampedes, engines growling anxiously. But pumps run dry, cardboard mocks with no gasoline. Doors slam in frustration, tires screeching away. Desperate journeys lure them to distant regions, craving cheaper fuel. Hundreds of kilometers they drive, only to drain their final reserves, engines sputtering into silence. Imagine the tremble of hands on steering wheels, the sour sweat staining shirts during those endless chases. Private cars languish, burden shifting to public transit. Minibuses bulge, bodies pressed against windows, the din of complaints mixing with overheated fumes. Taxis? They rarely pounce, and when they do, extortionate fares sting deeper than the sun's bite. What twisted madness is this, where basic motion counts as privilege? As shortages collide, Crimea teeters on collapse. Will this be the moment neighbors rally, or erupt in greater fury? Ilan, and what horrors lurk next, as an economy gasps for breath? The public transportation system has become another casualty of the ongoing crisis. With private vehicles off the road, the weight of transport now rests solely on the stressed minibuses and buses. These city minibuses are crammed to the brim, barely managing to accommodate the overflow of desperate commuters. Meanwhile, taxis either refuse to start or demand outrageous prices for the little fuel they have left. People find themselves waiting hours at bus stops, just to reach their jobs, hospitals, or schools. Life in the city has devolved into a logistical ordeal, echoing the frustrations of the past. The crisis doesn't just stifle daily life, it paralyzes the entire economy. A local activist speaking with Medusa revealed that as the harvest season approaches, agriculture faces an imminent collapse. Without diesel, tractors and harvesters sit idle, while workers remain stranded, unable to reach the fields. The land yields nothing, and a looming food crisis threatens to engulf the region. Transportation networks have disintegrated, products cannot make it to market, workers can't get to their jobs, and factories are left to shut down operations, forced into silence. Only state agencies and military units have exclusive access to fuel through special allocations, a privilege that amplifies public resentment. People on the streets witness the stark contrast. Gasoline is available for the regime, yet it remains elusive for ordinary citizens. The reality is grim, underscored by data from Crimea'S, a respected Russian business publication. Their report reveals that within a network of 17,000 gas stations, half of those in Crimea and Sevastopol have entirely ceased operations. This is not mere hearsay, it's a documented fact reflecting the desperate situation. But the struggles facing Crimeans transcend mere fuel shortages. Each day brings new trials, leaving the populace to grapple with a future that appears increasingly bleak. As the sun sets, the sounds of life, once vibrant and filled with promise, falter. Cracks of despair echo through the streets, the scent of desperation lingers in the air, and hopeful whispers have been silenced, overshadowed by the chaos that envelopes everyday life. The struggle for fuel epitomizes a deeper crisis, raising questions that haunt many. How will they survive when the basics become luxuries? What will emerge from this storm of adversity? Original context clarified and translated for intrinsic understanding, ensuring the narrative flows seamlessly. Oil and gasoline reservoirs are nearly depleted across Crimea and Sevastopol. Reports monitoring over 17,000 stations reveal that half have shut down entirely. This isn't hearsay, it's cold, documented data. Yet the struggles extend far beyond fuel, plunging deeper into everyday despair. Imagine waking up to silence, but not peace, the eerie quiet of empty pockets and growling stomachs. What if dreams of stability crumbled, leaving families clawing at thresholds of survival? In occupied Crimea, average wages hover pitifully below Russia's own minimum standards. Glossy propaganda shouts tales of prosperity, boasting inflated averages boosted by Moscow's elites and high-ranking bureaucrats. But peel back the facade, and the truth stings like salt in a wound. Ordinary locals in tourism, farming, or services scrape by on 15 to 18,000 rubles monthly. That's starvation-level poverty, even by Russian benchmarks. This meager income clashes violently with wartime inflation's brutal grip. A household's monthly outlay twists into a nightmare gauntlet. Torn supply lines and withered agriculture inflate basic food costs, spiking higher than mainland Russia. 60 to 70% of a low earner's budget vanishes on essentials, bread with a stale, crummy texture, eggs smelling faintly of mildew, vegetables wilting under touch. Gasoline rations, capped at 20 liters per week, vanish onto black markets at 5 times the price. For families with cars, even a doctor's run turns into agonizing sacrifice, tires crunching gravel as debts pile. Bills for electricity and water soar relentlessly. While rents balloon thanks to swarms of Russian officials and troops flooding the land. Tally it up, and dread emerges. By month's end, Crimean households emerge bankrupt, 0 rubles for clothes, schooling, medicine, or life's random punches. Buying power? Evaporated, like mist over arid soil. This isn't mere low pay, it's war's harsh forge, hammering exploitative toil. Workers endure hours that blur days, muscles aching from relentless grind, often minus safeguards. The stench of oppression lingers, a fetid mix of sweat and unresolved grievance. How much longer until this powder keg ignites? Will Putin's gilded promises drown in the same drought they've inflicted? Stay tuned, as the next revelation flips everything, a hidden elite's hoard exposed amid the masses' famine. The scales of fate tremble, ready to tip. What lurks beneath this crumbling veneer? The fuel crisis in Crimea and Sevastopol worsens, with reservoirs nearly empty at half of all outlets shuttered permanently, backed by data tracking 17,000 stations. But the pain radiates outward, trapping residents in unrelenting hardship. Picture a life where paychecks dissolve before hope can bloom, the bitter taste of broken vows lingering on tongues. Could stability's grand theater hide a shell of destitution, mocking the powerless while elites feast? Occupied Crimea's average earnings plummet beneath Russia's floor for subsistence. Propaganda beams rosy distortions, fanning dubious stats padded by salaries from Moscow's privileged core, officers, spies, and suits parachuted in to administer. Reality bites harder. Jot down 15 to 18,000 rubles monthly for the average Crimean laborer in hospitality, farms, or everyday service. That's destitution's mark, substandard even by homeland metrics. Budge against this backdrop of surging costs, ignited by conflict and blockade. Household budgets morph into battles for existence. Scarred supply webs and collapsed yields jack up produce prices, outstripping mainland tariffs. 60 to 70% of humble earners' funds bleed into basics, groceries that feel spongy and underweighted, vegetables gritty with dust. Rationed fuel, doled at 20 liters weekly, leaps to quintuple on illicit markets. Car-reliant families endure rough journeys to work or clinics, engines sputtering alerts of impending breakdowns. Utility fees climb without mercy, augmented by rental hikes for housing flooded by Russian operatives and garrisons. Crunch the sums, and terror unfolds. End-of-month families are wiped clean, no coin for garments, lessons, healings, or surprises. Economic might has flatlined. This anguish stems not solely from scant wages, but regressive war-imposed drudgery. Laborers toil endless, painful stretches with hazards ignored, scraping earnings that melt like sand through fingers. Who orchestrated this? As revelations unfold, a startling betrayal unravels, Kremlin's insiders siphoning resources while the crowd starves. Prepare for the explosion. What concealed sins drive Crimea's fall from grace? As the situation deteriorates in Crimea, the harsh reality for its residents continues to unfold. In a land where hope once thrived, the promise of a prosperous future has shattered under the weight of oppression and mismanagement. The local economy has been completely restructured to support the demands of the Russian military. Factories, shipyards, and mechanical workshops in Sevastopol and Kerch are now under military control. Workers face long, grueling hours without safety measures in place, scrambling to repair armored vehicles and vessels damaged in the ongoing conflict. Meanwhile, the local economy is in freefall, with military budgets consuming the resources that could have revitalized civilian life. Salaries are often delayed or unpaid, particularly in government roles, forcing individuals to work for free, bound under the iron grip of military rule. In this oppressive environment, worker rights have all but disappeared. The concepts of unions and strikes are mere echoes of a forgotten past, where dissent could lead to accusations of treason and interrogation by state authorities. Citizens are caught in a harrowing dilemma: accept inhumane working conditions or risk complete destitution without employment. For the tens of thousands who once flourished in Crimea's tourism industry, its lifeblood, life has become a daily struggle for survival. Putin's grand vision of a Russian utopia has devolved into a cruel betrayal for those living there. Crimea is no longer viewed as a valued part of Russia but rather as a military outpost, whose people and resources are exploited relentlessly. The pervasive economic agony, joined with the anxiety stemming from ongoing military actions and the crumbling infrastructure, is igniting a fierce undercurrent of resentment among the populace. The regime must now grapple with the unsettling reality that this mounting anger could explode at any moment, representing their most daunting fear. How much longer can this cycle of suffering and exploitation continue before the tide turns? The story of Crimea is unfolding, and its ending remains uncertain. With mounting instability across the peninsula, where will the desperate struggle for basic needs lead? In Crimea, a chilling crisis is unfolding, a silent yet violent struggle for survival. For the first time since 1971, the Belbec River has gone dry, leaving not just a parched landscape but withering hope. The initial impression may suggest a mere environmental issue, but the truth digs deeper. Promises of stability and prosperity from leadership now haunt the land, echoing with the failures of war, leadership, and governance. The taps are dry, the soil is cracked, and despair seeps into every corner of this once vibrant peninsula. With cities such as Sevastel and Simaropel facing water rations of only a few hours each day, individuals hurriedly fill containers during those fleeting moments, bracing for a day filled with uncertainty. In areas where supply simply cannot keep up, witnesses see long lines of weary souls formed before makeshift water tanks, their hopes rising with each passing minute under the unforgiving sun, thirst etched into their faces. But the crisis extends beyond civilians. More than 60,000 Russian soldiers are trapped in the center of this drought, reliant not just on weaponry but desperately on water. With a staggering need for thousands of liters each day, the occupation administration's attempts to prioritize military needs are falling woefully short. Reports reveal an abysmal supply, a mere 20 to 30 liters for 1,000 troops. To grasp Crimea's water disaster, one must delve into the peninsula's geographical and historical intricacies. Naturally arid, Crimea has long struggled with inadequate freshwater, prompting Soviet engineers to construct the North Crimea Canal. This lifeline provided about 85% of the region's water, nourishing its famed vineyards and filling urban taps. However, the illegal annexation of Crimea in 2014 saw Ukraine sever this vital water source in a decisive move that plunged the peninsula into a relentless fight for survival. In the wake of the annexation, Russia expended vast resources on drilling new wells and pursuing ambitious projects, but these could not replicate the canal's output. During the total invasion of Ukraine in February 2022, regaining control over Crimea's water became a military objective. The quick capture of the Kakhovka hydroelectric power plant seemed to open the floodgates once more, but this victory was short-lived. In June 2023, following a catastrophic explosion, the dam was destroyed, severing Crimea from its already scant water supply for good. What is astonishing about this tale is not just the drying river but a regime entrapped by its own decisions. The drying of the Belbec River serves as a stark indicator of betrayal and failure. Without the canal to ease the water stress, nearly 2.5 million Crimeans, once synonymous with vacation bliss, now languish in a daily battle for water, dignity, and survival. The landscape is transformed, tourism has plummeted, agricultural sectors wilt, and public health hangs by a thread, teetering on the edge of catastrophe. With a collapsing economy and mounting public health risks, Crimea stands at a crossroads, facing one of the most severe humanitarian crises to date. In Crimea, a dramatic crisis unfolds, turning once fertile land into a battlefield for survival. For the first time since 1971, the Belbec River lies dry, a symbol of not just environmental decay but also vanishing hope. What appears to be a mere climate issue runs far deeper, exposing the stark reality of broken promises and the grim effects of poor governance and ongoing conflict. The taps are empty, the earth is cracked, and despair permeates the lives of residents on this once thriving peninsula. In cities like Sevastel and Simaropel, water is now a precious commodity, flowing only for a few hours each morning and evening. In growing desperation, people rush to fill their containers during these fleeting moments, preparing for another day steeped in uncertainty. Meanwhile, in locations where water supply is inadequate, heartbreaking scenes present themselves. Long lines of exhausted individuals gather around water tanks, waiting under the blistering sun, their faces etched with thirst. Yet this crisis does not solely affect civilians. Over 60,000 Russian soldiers stationed on the peninsula are equally ensnared in this predicament, their survival hinging as much on water as on weaponry. When military priorities take precedence, reports indicate a shocking reality: as little as 20 to 30 liters of water might be delivered daily to support 1,000 troops. This reality reveals the extent of the failure that plagues Crimea as a whole. To truly grasp the water calamity facing Crimea, one must uncover the depths of its geographical and historical context. This arid peninsula has consistently struggled with the scarcity of freshwater sources. In response, Soviet engineers constructed the North Crimea Canal, a lifeline that provided around 85% of the peninsula's water, irrigating its celebrated vineyards and keeping urban taps flowing. However, in 2014, following a controversial annexation by Russia, Ukraine severed this vital supply, thrusting Crimea into a harsh struggle for survival. After the annexation, Russia poured tremendous resources into drilling new wells and attempting various ambitious projects, yet none could match the canal's previous output. The situation escalated during the full-scale invasion of Ukraine in February 2022, where recovering control over Crimea's water became a strategic objective. Initially, the rapid capture of the Kakhovka hydroelectric power plant seemed to restore a portion of this critical supply. However, this triumph was short-lived when, in June 2023, a catastrophic explosion destroyed the dam, forever severing Crimea's already meager water resources. What makes this tale so striking is not just the parched landscape but a regime ensnared by its own choices. The drying of the Belbec River starkly reflects deep-seated betrayal and failure. With the canal out of commission, nearly 2.5 million Crimeans, once synonymous with leisure and tranquility, now endure a relentless struggle for the most basic of necessities, water. Their reality has transformed, tourism has plummeted, agriculture is collapsing, and public health teeters on the brink of calamity. As the economy disintegrates and health crises loom larger, Crimea finds itself at a devastating crossroads, facing one of its most severe humanitarian challenges in modern history. With every passing moment, the existential crisis deepens, as the once thriving tourist haven continues to dissolve into despair.